Okay, so our first speaker is Tom Tay, former mayor of Anaheim and national leader in the City of Kindness movement. You can read more about him at the back of your program. Please, let's put our hands together to welcome Tom Tay.
Wow. It is wonderful to be here. In Eugene, I flew up on a plane this morning with a bunch of, actually they're very kind Oregon fans after whooping up on us from Southern California. No, but the reason I'm here is, I guess to answer that question from Javi, is I received a very kind invitation from Doug Carnine and about what you're all are doing here in Eugene and creating a city of kindness. And so I'm very honored to be here, and I've had conversations in the past and great coffee today with your wonderful mayor, Mayor Venice, and it's gave me a beautiful welcoming to your city. So I was telling Mayor Venice it is much easier being former mayor than mayor, I can tell you that. So she has a very, very joyful but difficult job, and I know she appreciates the support from her community. And so I can tell you, you guys, so I'm here talking about kindness. I'm certainly not an expert on kindness, and certainly not really very humbled to be talking to you all here in Eugene. You're already doing so much, and the stories I've heard. But maybe I know a little, got to know a little bit about creating a culture of kindness. And I think what we're talking about really is getting everybody in the same boat, rowing the same direction. And that's a very powerful thing. My wife grew up on a ranch in outside Cheyenne, Wyoming, and one of 8 kids, and her dad would go to his kids or their family all the time and take one of those matches, those wooden matches. And he'd take one and break it, and then he'd take 10 of them for their family, and they say you can't break these 10 matches. And I think that's kind of about when you get people working together, it creates strength, and nothing could stop you. So anyway, what I'd like to do is talk about really creating a culture. And maybe that's where I have a little experience in Anaheim, and I'm very proud of what the people in Anaheim have accomplished. So let's see if this works. Yes, it does. All right. So if you don't mind, I'd like to maybe just talk more conversational. And anyway, so Natasha had written these. They came back after this trip, and they were grieving as a family, and they found all these beautiful things that Natasha had written about kindness as a little 6-year-old. And he said the whole community came out and talked about how Natasha, when other kids were playing video games or whatnot, Natasha would write and talk about kindness all the time. So then Dr. Jayevsky says, he told me, he says, in medicine, you can either treat the symptoms or you can stimulate the body to heal from within holistically. He said, that's what I do as a holistic doctor. And then he said, I think the same thing applies to a city. You can either treat the symptoms or you can stimulate the city to heal from within holistically. He says, I think that has something to do with kindness. So for me, that was one of those light bulb moments, maybe the light bulb moment in my life, where because I had 10 years, I call it the whack-a-mole game of symptom treating. And after 10 years, the city kind of seemed in the same spot. And so anyway, as it turned out, I thought I was done with politics. But then 6 years later, this mayor's seat opened up, and I really felt I had to run under this idea of holistically healing the city and changing culture. And the word kindness, I thought a lot about that word. So kindness is, it's way different from being nice. It's doing something for someone else with no expectation in return. It's getting out of what's in it for me. It's, you can do a favor for a return favor that's more like a contract, nothing necessarily wrong with that, but the virtue is with the kind act. It's actually, the word comes from kin. So I really felt as many of you probably have this feeling, I felt I had to run. So I ran this platform, had to overcome a lot of fear of ridicule, people maybe thinking I'm not serious, because there's a lot of serious, as mayor knows, a lot of serious things you deal with as a mayor, but I thought I have to do this. So I remember my first event, why am I running? I said, well, here it goes. I want to change the culture of the city, create a culture of kindness. And people were like, we get it. Something deeper needs to happen. So I ran, won surprisingly, by a large margin. And, oops, there we go. So this idea of culture, I know from my other life, I run a company and a family business, and I know an organization is all about culture, what creates value in a business. It's what creates, why is one school better than another school? Because why is a classroom different? Why is anything? It's about culture, and it's how people think. If you could change culture, it actually is much more lasting than any, as you see, human nature, the one that's the toughest to change, if ever. But right next to that is culture, and then governance. We could pass all the ordinances in the world and resolutions, but culture is much more powerful. It's how people think. It's how they make decisions. So I thought, well, if a CEO could do it in an organization, a principal in a school, why not a mayor in an entire city? And you're really using this idea of bully pulpit. He's maybe not the best word now with kindness, because bully, but Teddy Roosevelt term. So anyway, so I ran, got elected, and there we go. So once I was elected, I thought, okay, now what do we do? Because you usually don't think about that when you're running, right? So we actually have to do something. So I thought, okay, how would a kind city respond? And in Southern California, we have issues with a lot of people moving in from all over the country, all over the world, and not knowing their neighbors. You think about it, if you're not connected with your neighbors or others, it becomes a very brittle city. And this idea of resiliency. And you know, when bad things happen, a lot of people, you know, sometimes in government we think, hey, we like to tell people the police will take care of it or the fire department will take care of it. Well, forget that. On these big disasters, there's not nearly enough. And it's got to be neighbor looking after neighbor, taking care of one another. So we had to kind of break through that culture of the government's going to take care of everything. And we're only one day away from that big earthquake in Southern California. And if you go out in your street after an earthquake, and if you don't know your neighbor, and you don't know that Mary down the street has a construction company, or John's a doctor, or whatever it is, all those things that happen when people connect, we're in big trouble. So just this idea of hi neighbor, get to know your neighbor. And we did that, and so people it's very important for community policing. It's actually the foundation of it. Kindness is what connects people together. It's a mortar that holds, I call it social infrastructure, social muscle. Think about it, it's a kind act, doing something for someone else that connects people. Emergency preparedness, I just mentioned that, but also community building. People are just happier. And there's studies, you don't need studies because we all know it. People are happier when they care for their neighbor and their neighbor cares for them. And the way that happens is through kind acts. So if you could get a conscious, mindful commitment from our city to meet your neighbor, it's powerful. I could go on this for hours, which I know I'm kind of limited on time. But the idea is it's not just a feel-good thing. Not that that's not enough, but there's purposeful, municipal, civic reasons to be kind. So anyway, excuse me. So another thing we did was with our schools, our elementary school district. So these kids are 90% of the kids in the Anaheim Elementary School District fall below the poverty line. It's one of the worst in the country, actually. And so some of these neighbors are very challenged. And we asked these kids, I met with the superintendent, and we asked these kids to do a million acts of kindness, and they did. And it was really cool. And I think there's a video that goes along with this. Is there any way to get that going?
Oh my gosh, this is incredibly exciting for these kids. Good afternoon to you both. What these kids have accomplished is nothing short of extraordinary. The Dalai Lama took notice, so now 10 lucky kids from each school that participated in this will have a chance to go celebrate with him for his 80th birthday. Pretty extraordinary. But what these kids hope is that you at home will see what they've done, be inspired to do the same. Do you think you'll change the world?
It will change the world.
An unimaginable feat. Students performed 1 million acts of kindness between 24 elementary schools in Anaheim City School District.
Kindness is the secret path to successful.
It feels like a spark and your body just comes up like fireworks.
Here at Gower Elementary alone, kids performed 70,000 acts of kindness over the past year.
My act of kindness, I help my grandma cook.
Help kids that are feeling down, and I help comfort them.
We collected coins to support finding a cure for leukemia.
Plus, relief to the Philippines, letters to veterans thanking them for their service, and something so simple as giving a little girl a hug if she was sitting alone.
This has happened to me, and it has inspired me to help other people.
To that little girl sitting there by herself, it's a very, very big thing and can be life-changing.
Anaheim Mayor Tom Tate was the brains behind 1 million acts of kindness. He was inspired by a 6.5-year-old girl named Natasha. We spoke to Natasha's father.
She used to say, it's not enough to do no wrong in one day.
Nearly 10 years after Natasha's untimely death, the Dalai Lama heard about the 1 million acts of kindness movement she inspired and invited Mayor Tate to India.
This is the way to achieve peace in the world, and you are making that happen.
His Holiness's personal emissary for peace had this message.
Through kindness, you can find love, and through love, you can find compassion, and through compassion, you can find world peace.
I'll come back to that. So here these Anaheim kids do 1 million acts of kindness, and then as crazy as this may sound, then I get a call from a man named Lama Tenzin Dowden, who is the Dalai Lama's emissary for peace, saying they've heard about the 1 million acts of kindness and invited my wife, Julie, and I to go back to Dharamsala to meet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we went back there, and it was the most incredible trip. 3 days we spent with His Holiness and Bishop Desmond Tutu, of all people. And it was incredible. It was incredible with these two great leaders. And they're talking about, they were actually working on this Book of Joy together. It's out, it's a bestseller now. So that His Holiness believes the path to world peace is creating a culture of kindness in our cities and particularly schools. And he believes if we could do that, within a generation, we'll have world peace. He said, after I'm gone, he says, but we can do that. And he says, will you help me? And I said, of course, what are you going to say to the Dalai Lama? You got too busy with other things. But, and he also said, and he says, you know, what you're doing in Anaheim is a good start. And actually at the time I kind of thought, well, I thought it was a little bit better than a good start. But he says, because it's just a good start. He says, but you have to work at it. He said, you have to work at it. And if you don't work at it, you'll become a city of anger and city of fear. So I let that settle in a little bit. And he's right, because it doesn't just happen by itself. Even though he believes that we're all born with kindness in us, from our mothers, actually. He believes we all have that. But you have to work at it to bring it out, and certainly bring it out in a city. So anyway, it sounds crazy, but I've gotten to know His Holiness through this process, and I asked him if he would speak to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which we had in 2015, and in Indianapolis. And then we thought, well, who else can we have share the stage with His Holiness? And if we missed anybody, we asked a friend of mine had a connection, talked to Lady Gaga's mother, who has, that's where you get a hold of Lady Gaga, I found out. But she was doing these wonderful things with anti-bullying and LGBTQ issues. But really what she was talking about was kindness. So we asked her if she would come and speak to the mayors with His Holiness. And then and also a guy named Phil Anschutz, who's started something called randomactsofkindness.com, who's a very wealthy guy out of Denver, wonderful, very quietly funds this thing. And so you have this conservative businessman, one of the world's greatest entertainers, and one of the spiritual leaders of the world, all on stage agreeing that it's about creating a culture of kindness in your cities is the key. And it's really very powerful, very powerful. And by the way, Lady Gaga was incredible. She was actually banned from the next Monday from downloading, her music being downloaded in China. So she talks about bravery and kindness. That was a brave thing that she did, very brave thing. Okay, next slide. So this is more kind of, wait. Hold on. No, remember, it's all about kindness. So then, I guess I want to tell you this just to see where this goes. And none of this I could have planned. I never even thought about. But the concept is so powerful. So back in 2016, we had an officer-involved shooting that led to riots in Baton Rouge, St. Paul. And then you had officers who were killed in Dallas by an assassin. And the country was boiling. And I got a call from the White House saying, can you meet with the president tomorrow? He's putting together an emergency task force on community relations, race relations, and community policing. So here I find myself at the White House with President Obama, head of the Black Lives Matter movement, head of International Police Chiefs Association, Attorney General, and a handful of other folks. And here I am talking about kindness. And the president says, at the end of the meeting, 5-hour meeting, it was an incredible meeting. But it's kindness that shows the humanity of the community to the police officers, and it's kindness that shows the police officers' humanity to the community. And that's the key to that whole issue, is people understanding each other through acts of kindness. And I remember at that time, you also had issues in New York with Eric Gardner, and you had near riots happening in New York. And you had I remember seeing a picture that went viral, and it was a picture of a New York police officer who someone had snapped a picture, it wasn't like a campaign, of him buying shoes for a homeless man. You guys remember seeing that? Because we went all over the place. Someone just snapped it and they hung it up on the precinct, and someone took a picture of that, and it goes crazy viral. I said that one picture did more for the NYPD relations with the community than any, billion-dollar PR campaign they could have done. That one act of kindness. It's so powerful. Habib talked about an act of kindness. It is, my friend Dr. Jayevsky says, kindness is like there's a plant called the bumble plant, tiny little seed you put in the ground, and nothing could happen for 10 years, and all of a sudden this beautiful bush takes off. And that's the way an act of kindness is. Anyway, that led to, this is State Department, Bureau of Counterterrorism. The idea is there's something called Strong Cities Network, cities throughout the world banding together to counter violent extremism. European cities got real issues going on right now with people coming back from ISIS, also a rising kind of a Nazi movement in Germany. So here I find myself speaking to counterterrorism folks about kindness. And so, certainly there are short-term issues that have to be dealt with, but in the long term, generationally, people generally don't hate people who are kind to them, or they don't hate a city that is a kind city. So if you could have, in a generation, maybe this many people hating you to this many people, it gets a lot better. Let's see here. Lucy knows. So when you're mayor, you just never know what's going to happen. Almost every day. Now I look at my cell phone. I don't have that I hope nothing bad happened today, feel. Well, we had a bad thing happen in Anaheim. We had a KKK rally, of all things, in Anaheim, city of kindness. And it was, and it's one of these things you can't stop. People have the rights to free speech, but it blew up, and there was bloodshed, there was stabbings, and it was terrible. And I thought, well, I really thought it could turn into some real civil unrest. And it didn't. And I think that's what happens. This was after about four or 5 years of kindness, culture work. And what happened was, next slide, please. The next day, a group of people got together, and City Hall had nothing to do with it. They asked me if I would join. And so I go down to the park where it happened, and they started a march from the park to City Hall singing songs and responded to that hate with kindness. And it was very powerful. Next slide. I remember walking past this guy. And it was so there's two ways you can respond. One is kind and with kindness, and one is not. I think that builds up kind of a capital account of goodwill in your city by having acts of kindness. Next slide. Again, it's not. This is like serious things. I've gotten to know the head of neurology at Stanford University, and I know you've got a leading neurologist, neuroscientist here at Oregon. Tell you the same thing, but Stanford started a department in their medical school of kindness and compassion. Turns out it's about the healthiest thing you could do for yourself. Your brain rewires itself, blood pressure, immune system, across the board. It's so, which is very interesting. The same antidote, I thought about this, the same antidote for our person is also the same antidote for our big corpus. It's kindness. UCLA, just a $20 million grant, study the effects of kindness. That was just a couple weeks ago. So in Anaheim, it came down to when we instituted policies, how we deal with addiction. If you're an addict in Anaheim, now you go to the police station, you'll get help. No judging, because the last thing, if you have an addiction, is to be judged or worse, kicked when you're down. So that sends a message that what the city is there to help you. The police department is kind, which they are, by the way. Sometimes it doesn't come across that way, but it's about bringing out that kindness. So we did that, didn't really know how it would work. Like 300 people in the first year showed up to our police officers or police department and took advantage of that. Homeless issue, I know you've got, all the cities do. I thought, how would a kind city respond? And in Anaheim, first thing we did, we had to start a program called Coming Home Anaheim. So it's very simple. We had all these people who wanted to help and feed people in parks and things like that, but people aren't going to get better if they're not, it's more symptom treating. They're not going to get better if they don't have a roof over their heads. And it's a tough thing for government to handle, because if we had maybe 1,000 or 1,500 homeless people chronically. And you can't take a square, put a round peg in a square hole. Everybody's different. And it takes, frankly, kindness and love. And we had all these people who had it in them. So what we did, Coming Home in Anaheim, it didn't cost the city hardly anything. We just brought a group together to coordinate the churches and mosques and synagogues. And said, we got all these people, if we could get them under a roof, if we could use that energy, and over 1,000 people who were homeless, living in some sort of permanent housing. Didn't cost the city anything. $160,000 a year to coordinate it. Just using the power of kindness. I took some pictures of, we have a riverbed near the stadium. About 1,000 people camped out there. And so my last week of being mayor, last month of being mayor, we approved 2 shelters, so our second and third shelter actually, another 320 beds. And next slide. There it is right there. Salvation Army running it, another nonprofit group running it. But I think what's significant is not one person Not one person came to the council meeting to oppose it. Right? So you all know what that's, because, so you guys are faced with this. You've got a mayor here who's trying to make things happen. That is the problem. So in Anaheim, it was about, well, I'll take Orange County, where Orange County is 3.2 million people. We had, on the homeless count, maybe 6,000, 7,000 homeless people. So I'm thinking, okay, that's less than 1%. So it's about the same numbers here, maybe 1%, maybe a little bit more per capita here in Eugene. So you think about what 99% cannot solve a 1% problem, right? If you look at it that way, this is solvable. You know, some people just don't fit, for whatever reason. They just don't fit in the standards that society has. And the key is to getting shelter, and the key to that is getting a city around locations, because nobody wants them near them. But I tell you this, no one's complained even afterwards. The first one we built, no complaints. The fear is turned out in Anaheim was much greater than any realization. But the stumbling block is the location, because any location, the people around are going to be fearful, rightfully so. I'm going to say rightfully so. I mean, it's understandable. It's usually the biggest investment people have in their lives is their home or their business, and they're very scared. And it's not going to work out. So, but the community, so they'll, if it takes the community coming together, think about kindness. And actually, by the way, we talked about this at lunch. Kindness doesn't mean you don't, with the homeless situation, it is about holding people accountable too. Because you have public assets, sidewalks, parks that have to be used for its intended purpose. Like a kind parent doesn't let your kids run amok. So kindness also means holding people accountable, but it means getting them in some sort of shelter with a roof over their head, because they're not going to get better. Certainly camping out on a cold sidewalk. And the only way to get better is really have a roof over their head. And so anyway, it sounds like I'm preachy, and I don't mean to be, because anyway, there's all sorts of the science and everything's really catching. I'm going to say catching up, but it's really lots been written lately. This is Inc. magazine, another article. Next one, making kindness a core tenet of your company. So happens it's great for business. I don't know why it wouldn't. Everything gets better when people are kinder, including business, including people's bottom line. It's not why you do it. It's a side benefit, but it's good for business. This is from Harvard Business Review. Next slide. Chief Kindness Officer. I like this term, but this is Stanford Magazine. Same thing. Next slide. It's actually who wants to work with. Everyone wants to work with kind people. And if your business has a culture of kindness, we actually do it at my business. And this is our 4th year in a row. We were voted one of the best places to work in Orange County. Just by simply embracing the culture of kindness. Schools, I said they were key. I told these kids, K through 6, that they're going to lead the way. And they enthusiastically did. This was Danbrook Elementary. Someone just painted this on the side of the school. So when culture starts to happen, by the way, it took a while. Someone said it was like the first couple of years, it was like the ships were in port and nothing was happening. Then all of a sudden the sails filled, and then things just started happening. So culture change takes a while. And it takes, but I tell you, this number of people in this room, if you all get on the same page and start, I think, just talking about it and getting people mindful and thinking. So at the end of the day, people would say, what's the goal? I said, well, so if you're from Anaheim, when you're walking down the street and when you think I'm from Anaheim, if you think, okay, we're a city of kindness, that's our ethos, that's who we are, it's kind of our civic duty, then the chance of that person doing something kind is a little bit greater, right? If it's part of the culture, chance of doing that kind act is a little bit greater, doing something for someone else, no expectation of return. So now if you measure all the interactions amongst people, so Anaheim, 350,000 people, millions of interactions every day, and put a label as either kind or not kind. Kind here, not kind up here. Not kind could be, like ignoring somebody. Now, if you change the ethos, change the culture, city of kindness, chance of doing something kind of a little bit greater, it starts to go like this. And when it goes like this, literally everything gets better. Crime, bullying at schools, senior loneliness, which, by the way, is a killer, and so much it's lack of kindness. Imagine knocking on a neighbor's door, a widow who hasn't seen anyone for a couple weeks. Addiction, functional isolation, lack of kindness, all those things that come from that. Homelessness, business is better, you name it. Everything gets better. I was talking to Doug, and Doug's been studying kindness for years and years. I see, we're driving from the airport. I say, anything you thought of that doesn't get better? I was like, nope. You cannot think of anything that doesn't get better. We're happier, we're healthier. So if you could get a city actually doing that and like leaning into it, everything gets better. So I know well, that's my wife, Julie. This is someone painted this on the side of a building, another mural. Those are coins we pass around, Anaheim City of Kindness. We actually changed our official motto. Not that we needed, we did from something that's kind of lame to City of Kindness. It was kind of lame. To City of Kindness, and people love it. We made these coins, and those little handout coins. The Dalai Lama carries that with him everywhere he goes, he told me. Puts it on his breakfast table, which is amazing to me. This is Be Kind 21, Born This Way Foundation, Lady Gaga. They said, hey, this is last year. They said, why don't you guys, we're starting this thing. If you do something for 21 days, it becomes a habit. If you can be kind for 21 days. So with about 9 days notice, we launched this in our schools, and these are kids. By the way, one of those we had an officer-involved shooting a few years ago, and it turned into civil unrest and lost control of the city, and one of them was in this neighborhood, Paul Revere School. So anyway, the fact that you have this group already together doing this.
Love. And through love, you can find compassion. And through compassion, you can find world peace.
So, it's a cool video. Maybe you can put it on the webpage of if you want to see it. But I wanted to play that because Dr. Jayevsky says what Natasha would say. It's so profound. It's not enough to do no wrong in a day. Sometimes we kind of think, okay, if we're just not doing any wrong in a day, but again, compassion is doing something for someone else, no expectation of return. And if you get a whole city behind that and all row in the same direction, it is powerful, and everything gets better. And I'm humbled that I was invited here, a former mayor. People don't call former mayors much anymore. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Doug. You guys are so far. I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing in Eugene. You have all the ingredients here. You're already doing it. I think it is just coordinating. And the ask is that you all start talking about it. Again, we didn't have any budget for this. But it was just talking about it and getting mindful. So with that, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Mayor Tom Tate. Anaheim and Eugene are both cities of ducks, which may be the key indicator of kindness. We are pleased to announce our next speaker, Eugene's Mayor Lucy Vennis. Mayor Vennis is a champion of kindness. In fact, if you read her weekly mayor's blog, the first sentence shares her intentions: to nurture our conversation and understanding of the issues before us. Today, Mayor Venus will share her thoughts on kindness and her commitment as a mayor of Eugene.
Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you so much, Mayor Tate, for your really inspiring words and experience. Let's thank him again. It's such an honor to have you here and to reflect on where we are as a city with respect to kindness. At our City Council public forum last week, 53 members of the public testified on a wide range of topics, from the impacts of homelessness to the urgency of climate change. As I listened to all of these impassioned and urgent concerns, I felt hopeful. These individuals are giving up a pleasant evening at home to share their concerns because they care. They are speaking in the spirit of creating a better community. People are speaking out of a depth of kindness. They are pleading with us as a government to respond in kind. When I review the programs that the City of Eugene includes as acts of kindness, I am struck by this fact. There is no shortage of kindness in our city. Right? People care and act on their compassion. We have one of the highest per capita number of nonprofits in the country. We are a leader in investing in creative, agile, outside-of-the-box solutions to homelessness. We repeatedly pass school bonds to invest in our children. We lead the way in improving accessibility for people who are disabled. That said, the intention of kindness is not always apparent. My commitment to a city of kindness is a commitment to raise the level of intentionality. In the best of circumstances, kindness is reflexive. In the worst, it is the furthest thing from your mind. We are seeking ways to reinforce the intention. We are living in turbulent times. Repeated traumas to our sense of well-being trigger protective, often defensive reactions. Some of this comes to us from the national dialogue, which has fostered a sense that if you don't agree with someone, they are either stupid or dangerous. Some years ago, I was at odds with my neighbor with whom I share a driveway. One day, we were in the midst of a tense conversation, and I commented, "If the two of us who speak the same language, hail from the same culture, and share a love of the same landscape, cannot find a way to work this out, there will never be peace in the Middle East." We can't solve the big problems if we don't start with the personal and the local. Eugene is poised to welcome the world in August of 2021 when we host the IAAF World Track and Field Championships. We are being intentional in our preparation for that event. Our intention is to do the good work we should do for our community anyway, to make investments that will stand as a legacy. Kindness is that legacy. My goal is for our community to embrace all of the communities within our city. A Latina businesswoman said to me not long ago that too often she sits in a room of white faces and hesitates to speak her mind as the only person of color at the table. Our legacy is to change that experience. How do we not simply say we are inclusive, but act on inclusion? What does that require from us, personally and collectively? One part of the city's work on climate change included the creation of an equity panel to enable the voices of communities of color to share their experiences and challenges. These are voices that are not heard often enough in our public discourse. Our promise to this panel is that we will do more than simply hear their voices. We will pay attention. We will return with action and hold ourselves accountable. Paying attention is a key ingredient of kindness. It is too easy to be complacent, to think we are listening and not hear, to think we are open-minded, but in fact, dismiss, to think we have created a welcoming community when many feel marginalized and overlooked. It is very clear to me that it is not enough to craft statements of inclusion or anti-bullying policies or even fair housing laws if the underlying culture, the underlying reflexes, undermine those good intentions. At its root, kindness is a sense of abundance. Not only is there enough to go around, there's enough of whatever, physical or emotional resources, to be generous. We live with abundance in this community, even as we struggle with housing and homelessness and face the challenges of climate change. The abundance is within us. It is us and our capacity to flex, adapt, welcome, create something new. My commitment to the legacy of 2021 is a commitment to the abundant diversity of our community. My goal is that we shine a light on the communities within our community, not to highlight them as different, but to build a sense of belonging, celebrating the cultures within our city that weave a tapestry that we should daily behold and enjoy. We will seek in the coming months opportunities to invite and savor the colors, textures, tastes, sounds, beliefs, and ideas that make us whole. Just as a single act of kindness, like inviting a newcomer to dinner, can make you feel good and whole, so can we as a city welcome our increasing diversity to build a deep sense of belonging. In 2017, the City Council was compelled by the national climate to enact an ordinance to protect individual freedoms. This law aimed to reassure immigrants in our community, but also any person of color, of any gender identity, of any belief, that we would protect their right to live here safely. My goal is that ultimately this law is unnecessary, that we as a community and as a nation revel in one another, that we come together in joy. I began this talk with a reference to the public forum at City Council. As much as I experience hope in those sessions, I also share the frustration of the public. Solutions are hard. Tensions rise because we don't see a common path. It is hard to feel kind in those moments. This is why we have to work to reinforce our best intentions. Most of us grew up trained with simple rules of etiquette. Please and thank you, excuse me, and you're welcome. In some ways, we have drifted away from those conditioned reflexes. Let's bring some of that back. There's an advocacy group for the disabled in Eugene that uses the phrase, "Look me in the eye." It's an excellent admonition. Let's begin our conversations with the intention of paying attention. I have a former colleague who I quote frequently because he said he always tried to approach every conversation with a healthy curiosity. Curiosity will take you past most barriers of understanding. So as you break into your groups today, I ask you to begin not with conviction about what you know and believe, but with curiosity about what you will hear from others. Let's make this curiosity, this capacity to pay attention, this understanding of our own abundance become our abiding intention. And from that, we will live up to our goal to become a city of kindness.
Well, welcome to our personal lives, Kindness for Self and Others. I'm Doug Carnine, a professor emeritus at the University of Oregon and coordinator for the campaign to make Eugene, Springfield cities of kindness. So it was personal experiences that convinced me of the surprising power of kindness. At age 35, my hospice friend Jeremy was already very sick with advanced ALS. He had no use of his body below his neck. Much of his life had been traumatic. He ran away from home at age 13 because of the behavior of his mother. As he lay on his deathbed, when I came to know him, his estranged wife would not allow his 11-year-old daughter to visit him because he'd been involved in a spiritual training as a yogi. Nevertheless, Jeremy radiated contentment, joy, and kindness. I would go to visit him and there would be other people already there, sometimes people he did not even know, just because they wanted to be in his presence. I even had another hospice worker call me and say, I've heard about Jeremy, would you mind if I go and visit him? So here was a person facing death, horrible circumstances, trauma in his life, and one of the things I write about what he said is, I quote it from my book, How Love Wins, The Power of Mindful Kindness. I think of life as a drop of water in a river. When the river came to a waterfall, many drops separated, each reflecting light a little differently according to its nature. At the end of its fall, my drop would simply be reunited with the river and flow on. It does not make any difference what kind of water drop you are. You could be any shape, size, or color. You are all the same as I am, and I am the same as you. Well, this experience with Jeremy got me thinking about the work I'd been doing writing a number of men convicted of murder in prison. And so I floated this idea of starting a mindful kindness partnership with men incarcerated in Tucker Max, which is one of the most notorious prisons in the United States. It's well known because it's the site for the movie Brubaker with Robert Redford, where they found 200 unmarked graves and where they used the torture telephone on inmates. So what does mindful kindness mean to men like Cody? Cody was convicted of murder and will never be free. He was abused as a child, and at the time of his arrest, his family and few friends, they were either dead or missing. Moreover, he would never be able to hold his daughter, who would be born after he entered prison, because he'll never leave prison. Being in his early 20s, the prospect of 60 years in prison had Cody on the verge of suicide. So Roy, my main partner in starting this partnership of mindful kindness, he wrote this about his first encounter with Cody. I remember feeling in my heart it would be a miracle if the kid lasted to Christmas. I saw that he was giving up, but there was no unking way I was going to let that kid give up. I threw him a cup of coffee and started to draw him out to get him to open up if possible in order to see where to start. Slowly, moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day, I shared the awesomeness and coolness, the wow of the Buddhist teaching about mindful kindness and how much of an amazing change it had made in my heart and mind. I became blessed because I was suddenly aware that I was now experiencing a peace of mind, a freedom in the mind that I never came close to on the streets where I had plenty of money to buy whatever I wanted. That's when I quit shooting dope in prison. The more I shared with him, the more he began to take hold and change. Roy also taught mindful kindness to two other partners, John Bruno and Tad Price. These partnerships are described in my other book, has this strange title of Saint Badass, Personal Transcendence in Tucker Max Hell, that's the prison. So, three of my co-authors here are men convicted of murder, by the way. So I got a letter from Christopher Brewer where he talks about John Bruno and Tad Price. Quote, I'm in a state of chaos within. A little over a month after my trial, I escaped my cell at the Supermax, coming out on a tier and beating and stabbing an officer. I've made attempts here at this unit and was again recently successful in breaking out and stabbing another officer. It's as if I'm in constant war within the suits and within myself. I'd first spoke with Tad Price, a man I'd done time around for many years, and was always amazed at his peaceful state, even amongst the confusion that surrounds us here. I as well know John Bruno, who radiates a sense of certainty, peacefulness, and calmness. I seek and need this in my life. I'm respectfully requesting you teach me. I will be a diligent student, grateful of your time and energy. That is, if you would be kind enough to teach me," end quote. So seeing how kindness and mindfulness affected Jeremy and Roy and John and Tad and Christopher convinced me to intensify my practice of mindful kindness, for example, in my marriage to Linda. Kindness makes a good relationship better, ranging from communication to intimacy. But the medical research that Pat alluded to and the mayor alluded to, as well as much other research in psychology and neuroscience and even anthropology, I'm convinced we're obligated to spread kindness more widely for the well-being of our community and even the well-being of our planet. And that's why we're here today.